keep your eye on this red line. It's my attempt at illustrating the timeline or plot, such as it is, of recent Nobel Prize winner Jon Fosse's quiet 7-part novel, Septology. Both religion and art are big themes in here, and I'll be talking about this book as an artist and as an atheist. Whether you've read it, or you're thinking about reading it, or maybe you're just open to hearing about a major work of literature, this video is for you. So yeah, this novel is not a straight line. Very quickly, it's about an artist named Asle, who sometimes thinks about moments from his past, and other times thinks about what he might do at least in the near future. And sometimes he thinks about a small group of people whose lives are not just intertwined with his own, but are in some sense funhouse mirrors of his own existence, or parallel lines, you might say. We have the love of his life, we have his neighbor, we have an artist or two whose life paths are very similar to his own, but with critical diversions that lead them to vastly different outcomes. And these characters and others have eerily similar names to his, and in some cases they look eerily similar to one another, to the point that one imagines they are other possible versions of our protagonist, or other possible women he might have shared a life with. And I feel like all of these parallel lines in the book fosters empathy, in some cases in the main character, but certainly in us as readers. It seems to me that this book is a meditation on life and life choices, and how little separates our fates from the fates of others, and our lives from others' lives. And it's also a meditation on what it's like to be an artist, and the sort of strange mix of futility and power that lies in that, as well as in religion. I'll get back to that. I've been calling this a book, but it's really 3 books, and it's called Septology because this is a novel split into 7 parts, distributed across 3 books. To be honest, I have not made anything out of the idea of these 7 parts or the 3 books, other than that 3 and 7 are sort of magic numbers in culture and in literature and in mysticism and religion. To me, this reads like one long thing. It doesn't really change a whole lot along the way, and it'll really test your patience if you're someone who's looking for a lot of action or crazy plot twists. At the end of this video, I will obviously tell you if I think you should read this thing. But to begin to answer that question, I want to play you this clip of Fosse describing his writing style.
Let's say, for instance, a basic motive in my writing. It's a person standing before a window looking out.
Yeah, hearing Fosse describe it that way made a lot of sense to me. Basically, the book places us in the main character's brain, and there's never a break. The whole novel is an uninterrupted stream of consciousness. It's just him observing from his tiny vantage point. And I mean, it's literally uninterrupted, because there are no periods in this book. It just goes and goes and goes. Which I like, by the way. It's similar in that way to this book, or even to some of the work that experimental poet Kenneth Goldsmith has done. Another way to think of it is in terms of a drawing made out of one continuous line, where the artist never lifts pen from paper. The covers of these books allude to a recently completed painting that our protagonist contemplates and continuously re-evaluates throughout the novel. The abstract painting is literally 2 lines crossing each other, and it's actually kind of brilliant how these covers do the same, tying the books together. There's a lot in here that really resonated with me as an artist or a creative person. There are descriptions of what it feels like to be sort of pregnant with an idea for an image that you just have to give birth to. There's a sense of obsession and a lack of choice in being an artist. Like you just have to do it, right? Always wrestling with ambition and possible failure. And there's a pain and relief around getting those images out. And there's an intense curiosity around the power and mystery of how artistic ideas flow through us. And this is where, for the artist in the book, and I suspect also for Fosse, religion comes into play. Or rather, not just religion per se, but mysticism and a belief in a higher power. As a painter, the protagonist in here is obsessed with this kind of mysterious light that he's able to see coming out of the darkest areas of his paintings when he gets them just right. And he essentially equates that light with God. Now, that's not how I see the world, but I do think that art making fills my life in much the same way that spirituality does for others. It may be almost a semantic difference more than anything. There are a lot of ruminations on God in here, which would normally be kind of a turnoff for me as not only an atheist, but really an anti-theist. But actually, the way that this character thinks about faith made me very empathetic and understanding. I thought that this was some of the most sympathetic writing about God and religion I've ever come across. I feel like it's presented in a way that makes me feel not so far apart from his point of view, which is maybe the ultimate and overarching feat of this work of literature. I think Septology is a very humanist novel. It's a text that makes me feel bound to other people in a really good way, which is kind of a miracle, to use religious language, as this book is decidedly about a very insular and isolated person. No man is an island. So, if you haven't read it, should you? Well, I guess that depends on what you're looking for as a reader. I found it very engaging. Personally, I was a big reader growing up and all through college, and then I really dropped the ball and all but stopped reading fiction. This is an unfortunate development, especially common among men, I think, and it's not something I'm proud of. I've tried to get back into reading several times over the last few years, and it's been challenging. Surprisingly, this very long novel somehow is what brought me back. Having said that, I'm not so sure that it's likely to do the same for you if you're in a similar situation to mine. This is not an exciting book, at least not on its face. This is very slow, it's repetitive, it's built on a lot of small everyday moments, and it could very easily be described as boring. But for whatever reason, I have an affinity for slow and boring things. I like a lot of art that reads as mundane at first glance, or even a second or third glance, but that contain infinite philosophical depth if you just stay with it and allow it to seep through you. This is that kind of art. It's written in extremely simple language, but it's about things that are anything but simple. Life's a tangled mess, isn't it? See you next week.